In September 2011, as the world marked the 10th anniversary of 9/11, an international group of artists presented their own take on war at an art exhibition in Berlin called Zeitenwende, Turning Point. On show were 50 works from 12 artists. There were light, video and textile installations. Photographs, oil and watercolour paintings. Some artists focused on the 9/11 attacks themselves. Others dealt with other wars, Iraq, Afghanistan and elsewhere. Still others looked at war in general and perceptions of war.
It's essential that people think of ways in which to capture, to reflect, to represent, and in doing so to comment on war and, dare I say, also war crimes, because it's how we think about these things that counts in the end. One of the key roles of art and of artists is to make us see things differently, to make us appreciate, to make us think about things in ways that we haven't before. In the past 20 years, the character of warfare has changed in many respects. War remains the same at its heart, but things change about it. And 9/11 comes to the heart of the ambiguity that's created. Was this an act of war? Was it a war crime? Or was it simply an act of political violence that somehow is outside the scope of war?
This is a matchbook. In late 2001, the CIA were dropping these all over Afghanistan in Urdu and Arabic and Pushtun. The idea that this was a war criminal and would be pursued and brought to justice. And you know, the famous Bush aside, not actually saying what people think he said, but saying, well, there's a famous Wild West poster.
There's an ambiguity that runs through all the events that come in the wake of 9/11, if not those of the decade preceding it. 9/11 really revealed the changing nature of warfare, the changing character perhaps of war crimes, and the ambiguities surrounding these issues. One of the things that we get to see in an exhibition such as Zeitenwende is how that ambiguity plays out. We see incidents that we can think of as crimes, that we can think of as war crimes, and we can see how the changing character of warfare and the ambiguities around war and war crimes play out in the way they're represented in the images in the collection.
Monica Anselment explored TV images of war and how they always seem to try and make it beautiful. Exhibition curator Martin Bayer explains.
He's very much interested in the aesthetics of war. So how is war being presented to us as a TV news audience? And she remembers very much the anti-aircraft fire, the tracer bullets being shown in the Gulf War of 1990-1991. And since then she is taking pictures of TV sets portraying war in the news. We have, of course, 9/11, we have so many occasions thereafter, and the striking bit is that on many occasions, just looking at these single pictures, you think of it as a beautiful occasion, you think of it as sunsets, as a bonfire, as a bushfire maybe, which looks quite nice, which looks quite interesting, but indeed it is war, it is destruction, it is terror, it is death. And what does it to an audience, what does it to people who see war as a quite beautiful endurance being shown to them? And she's now interested in this kind of reflection of war as an aesthetics, as a beautiful encounter. Of course, it's impossible, nearly impossible, to show real war in the news. But to what an extent do we prepare a public to accept war as a possibility when we show these nice pictures?
Meanwhile, Achim Rietmann looked at the Arab Spring. As Martin Bayer points out, he gives away very little information, so the observer has to do a lot of detective work.
He's exclusively working with this kind of material, with this kind of technique, and he's usually leaving out lots of us motifs. So we see lots of white on these pictures, we see lots of white space in these pictures, and thus lots of room for imagination for the viewer. Of course, this is a soldier, of course we can see that this is a tank, but the context is missing. There's a picture of a soldier running. Is it a good guy? Is it a bad guy? What a war is it? Is he fleeing? Or is he advancing? Is he attacking? We don't know. So we see a Somali pirate, we see a German soldier, we see special forces by the police doing an anti-terror mission. We're seeing a journalist. And there's also the victory signs, hands risen for the victory sign, by Arab people now taking part in the Arab rebellion. But what we don't know is the very context. We just imagine this from our minds, from our very specific interest, from our very specific background. And what is interesting to the artist is how the individuals watching his picture react to them and add to the pictures the missing bits. In the background there's 8 pictures by Marius Heckmann. Most of his series is from his work cycle Fading, and he's addressing the victims of 9/11, especially those victims who jumped down from the building of the World Trade Center, who made the decision not to be killed by waiting, but jumping to death. The pictures, the photos being taken back then also won the World Press Photo Award. Having said that, they are hardly seen by now. He's reminding us, at these scenes, he's reminding us what has been done, but why he's working on the very individuals is that he wants to remind us that this is not 3,000 people that died. This is not just a statistic of people, but it's individuals. It's individual decisions, it's individual people. And for example, one of the pictures included is called Portrait FD. This is Frank Doyle, a portrait of Frank Doyle, one of the people who jumped down from the building. There's also a picture of the hole that the second plane left in the building when it just crashed in. And there's pictures of people jumping down. They look very aesthetically. They could be jumping into water in a holiday resort. They could be using a trampoline, jumping up and down. But in this respect, in this case, they're jumping to death. But it's their decision. It's a decision where it's not too much room. It's not a positive win-win situation. But it's a very much decision people used, not just to wait and be killed, but chose their own time. There's also 3 photographs by Jo Röttger. Jo Röttger went to Afghanistan. He also went to an army training ground in Germany, and also to Bavaria, where some of the mountain troops he's following, or the he was following later on in Afghanistan, were stationed. And to me, these pictures of his series of 38 pictures called Landscape in Memory is a very condensation of the war in Afghanistan. What we, for example, see is a soldier holding his hand not to his rifle, but very much at the ready. So he's holding his hand very close to his handgun, to his sidearm, while a youth with a bicycle with some flowers is passing by. It could be that this Afghan youth is smiling at him. It could be that he's even giving her a flower. It could be that this youth is exploding himself and killing the soldier and himself. This is reality for the people in Afghanistan. This is a reality for the soldiers fighting in Afghanistan. And you could also tell the story in a different way. You could say, okay, that this young boy with his bicycle is able to enjoy flowers and go to the market and sell them privately. That the people on the back having a cup of tea, that the people on the other side building a home, this is the work of the soldiers being there and providing for security and having ousted the Taliban. This is also part of the reality of the Afghan war. But looking at this picture, it's also a very beautiful landscape, and it's also a very strange kind of situation, as it must be a strange kind of situation for any of us if you're living in a country and you have tens of thousands of soldiers from another country being there and saying and doing that they're providing security for you. This is a light installation by Katharina Arndt and Gero Neumeister. They actually used a science fiction movie. In this science fiction movie, the silhouette of New York was portrayed in a New York of 2047, and now we have 2011, but the silhouette is completely different, and whenever we see such a silhouette, we now, 10 years after 9/11, remember how it looked like and how it's extremely changed after this one incident. This artwork was not being done exclusively for this show, but it fits just so perfectly into this building that I always love to watch it right now. Very strong work.